Hello, I am Victor. This video covers lessons 11 and 12 of the Master Key System. I have included a link in the description that you can use to download it for free if you're interested in reading it. This part tells of the means by which we have discovered that the infinitely small as well as the infinitely large is in the last analysis nothing but force, motion, life and mind. It tells of the process by which we have become familiar with the vast organization by which we are identified with the complex operations of nature. It gives concise directions for making use of the creative power of the universe, the power by which all things are brought into existence. It shows how this marvelous power may be utilized, directed and made available for the solution of every human problem. Introduction. Your life is governed by law, by actual, immutable principles that never vary. Law is in operation at all times, in all places. Fixed laws underlie all human actions. For this reason, men who control giant industries are enabled to determine with absolute precision just what percentage of every 100,000 people will respond to any given set of conditions. It is well, however, to remember that while every effect is the result of a cause, the effect in turn becomes a cause, which creates other effects, which in turn creates still other causes, so that when you put the law of attraction into operation you must remember that you are starting a train of causation for good or otherwise which may have endless possibilities. We frequently hear it said, "A very distressing situation came into my life, which could not have been the result of my thought, as I certainly never entertained any thought which could have such a result." We fail to remember that like attracts like in the mental world, and that the thought which we entertain brings to us certain friendships, companionships of a particular kind, and these in turn bring about conditions and environment, which in turn are responsible for the conditions of which we complain. Part 11. Inductive reasoning is the process of the objective mind by which we compare a number of separate instances with one another until we see the common factor that gives rise to them all. Induction proceeds by comparison of facts. It is this method of studying nature which has resulted in the discovery of a reign of law which has marked an epoch in human progress. It is the dividing line between superstition and intelligence. It has eliminated the elements of uncertainty and caprice from men's lives and substituted law, reason and certitude. It is the watchman at the gate mentioned in a former part. When, by virtue of this principle, the world to which the senses were accustomed, has been revolutionized, when the sun has been arrested in his course, the apparently flat earth has been shaped into a ball and set whirling around him, when the inert matter has been resolved into active elements, and the universe presents itself wherever we direct the telescope and microscope, full of force, motion and life, we are constrained to ask by what possible means the delicate forms of organization in the midst of it are kept in order and repair. Like poles and like forces repel themselves or remain impenetrable to each other, and this cause seems in general sufficient to assign a proper place and distance to stars, men and forces. As men of different virtues enter into partnership, so do opposite poles attract each other, elements that have no property in common like acids and gases cling to each other in preference and a general exchange is kept up between the surplus and the demand. As the eye seeks and receives satisfaction from colors complementary to those which are given, so do need, want and desire, in the largest sense, induce, guide and determine action. It is our privilege to become conscious of the principle and act in accordance with it. Cuvier sees a tooth belonging to an extinct race of animals. This tooth wants a body for the performance of its function, and it defines the peculiar body it stands in need of with such precision that Cuvier is able to reconstruct the frame of this animal. Perturbations are observed in the motions of Uranus. Adams and Leverrier need another star at a certain place to keep the solar system in order, and Neptune appears in the place and at the hour appointed. The instinctive wants of the animal and the intellectual wants of Cuvier, the wants of nature and of the minds of Leverrier and Adams were alike, and thus the results, here the thoughts of an existence, there an existence. A well-defined lawful want, therefore, furnishes the reason for the more complex operations of nature. Having recorded correctly the answers furnished by nature and stretched our senses with the growing science over her surface, having joined hands with the levers that move the earth, we become conscious of such a close, varied and deep contact with the world without, that our wants and purposes become no less identified with the harmonious operations of this vast organization, than the life, liberty and happiness of the citizen are identified with the existence of his government. As the interests of the individual are protected by the arms of the country, added to his own, and his needs produce certain supply in the degree that they are felt more universally and steadily, in the same manner does conscious citizenship in the kingdom of nature secure us from the annoyances of subordinate agents by our alliance with superior powers, and by our conformity with the fundamental laws of resistance or inducement offered to mechanical or chemical agents, we distribute the labor to be performed between them and man to the best advantage of inventor and user. If Plato could have witnessed the pictures executed by the sun with the assistance of the photographer, or 100 similar illustrations of what man does by induction, he would perhaps have been reminded of the intellectual midwifery of his master and, in his own mind might have arisen the vision of a land where all manual, mechanical labor and repetition is assigned to the power of nature, where our wants are satisfied by purely mental operations set in motion by the will, and where the supply is created by the demand. However distant that land may appear, induction has taught men to make strides towards it and has surrounded him with benefits which are, at the same time, rewards for past fidelity and incentives for more assiduous devotion. Induction is also an aid in concentrating and strengthening our faculties for the remainder of the journey, giving unerring solution for individual as well as universal problems, by the mere operations of mind in the purest form. Here we find a method, the spirit of which is, to believe that what is sought has been accomplished, in order to accomplish it. A method, bequeathed upon us by the same Plato who, outside of this sphere, could never find how the ideas became realities. This conception is also elaborated by Swedenborg in his doctrine of correspondences. And a still greater teacher has said, "What things soever ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them, and ye shall have them." Mark 11:24 RV. The differences of the tenses in this passage is remarkable. We are first to believe that our desire has already been fulfilled, its accomplishment will then follow. This is a concise direction for making use of the creative power of thought by impressing on the universal subjective mind the particular thing which we desire as an already existing fact. We are thus thinking on the plane of the absolute and eliminating all consideration of conditions or limitation and are planting a seed which, if left undisturbed, will finally germinate into external fruition. To review, inductive reasoning is the process of the objective mind, by which we compare a number of separate instances with one another until we see the common factor that gives rise to them all. We see people in every civilized country on the globe, securing results by some process which they do not seem to understand themselves, and to which they usually attach more or less mystery. Our reason is given to us for the purpose of ascertaining the law by which these results are accomplished. The operation of this thought process is seen in those fortunate natures that possess everything that others must acquire by toil, who never have a struggle with conscience because they always act correctly, and can never comport themselves otherwise than with tact, learn everything easily, complete everything they begin with a happy knack, live in eternal harmony with themselves, without ever reflecting much what they do, or ever experiencing difficulty or toil. The fruit of this thought is, as it were, a gift of the gods, but a gift which few as yet realize, appreciate, or understand. The recognition of the marvelous power which is possessed by the mind under proper conditions and the fact that this power can be utilized, directed, and made available for the solution of every human problem is of transcendental importance. All truth is the same, whether stated in modern scientific terms or in the language of apostolic times. There are timid souls who fail to realize that the very completeness of truth requires various statement, that no one human formula will show every side of it. Change, emphasis, new language, novel interpretations, unfamiliar perspectives, are not, as some suppose, signs of departure from truth, but on the contrary they are evidence that the truth is being apprehended in new relations to human needs, and is becoming more generally understood. The truth must be told to each generation and to every people in new and different terms, so that when the great teacher said, "Believe that ye receive and ye shall receive," or when Paul said, "Faith is the substance of things not seen," or when modern science says, "The law of attraction is that law by which thought correlates with its object," each statement, when subjected to analysis, is found to contain exactly the same truth. The only difference being in the form of presentation. We are standing on the threshold of a new era. The time has arrived when man has learned the secrets of mastery and the way is being prepared for a new social order, more wonderful than anything ever heretofore dreamed of. The conflict of modern science with theology, the study of comparative religions, the tremendous power of new social movements, all of these are but clearing the way for the new order. They may have destroyed traditional forms which have become antiquated and impotent, but nothing of value has been lost. A new faith has been born, a faith which demands a new form of expression, and this faith is taking form in a deep consciousness of power which is being manifested in the present spiritual activity found on every hand. The spirit which sleeps in the mineral, breathes in the vegetable, moves in the animal, and reaches its highest development in man is the universal mind, and it behoves us to span the gulf between being and doing, theory and practice by demonstrating our understanding of the dominion which we have been given. By far the greatest discovery of all the centuries is the power of thought. The importance of this discovery has been a little slow in reaching the general consciousness, but it has arrived, and already in every field of research the importance of this greatest of all great discoveries is being demonstrated. You ask, in what does the creative power of thought consist? It consists in creating ideas, and these in turn objectify themselves by appropriating, inventing, observing, discerning, discovering, analyzing, ruling, governing, combining and applying matter and force. It can do this because it is an intelligent creative power. Thought reaches its loftiest activity when plunged into its own mysterious depth, when it breaks through the narrow compass of self and passes from truth to the region of eternal light, where all which is, was or ever will be, melt into one grand harmony. From this process of self-contemplation comes inspiration, which is creative intelligence, and which is undeniably superior to every element, force or law of nature, because it can understand, modify, govern and apply them to its own ends and purposes and therefore possess them. Wisdom begins with the dawn of reason, and reason is but an understanding of the knowledge and principles whereby we may know the true meaning of things. Wisdom, then, is illuminated reason, and this wisdom leads to humility, for humility is a large part of wisdom. We all know many who have achieved the seemingly impossible, who have realized lifelong dreams, who have changed everything, including themselves. We have sometimes marveled at the demonstration of an apparently irresistible power, which seemed to be ever available just when it was most needed. But it is all clear now. All that is required is an understanding of certain definite fundamental principles and their proper application. For your next exercise, concentrate on the quotation taken from the Bible, "Whatsoever things ye desire, when ye pray, believe that ye receive them and ye shall have them." Notice that there is no limitation. Whatsoever things is very definite and implies that the only limitation which is placed upon us is in our ability to think, to be equal to the occasion, to rise to the emergency, to remember that faith is not a shadow, but a substance, the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen. Part 11 questions. What is inductive reasoning? It is the process of the objective mind by which we compare a number of separate instances with each other until we see the common factor which gives rise to them all. What has this method of studying accomplished? It has resulted in the discovery of a reign of law which has marked an epoch in human progress. What is it that guides and determines action? It is need, want and desire which in the largest sense induce, guide and determine action. What is the formula for the unerring solution of every individual problem? We are to believe that our desire has already been fulfilled, its accomplishment will then follow. What great teachers advocated it? Jesus, Plato, Swedenborg. What is the result of the operation of this thought process? We are thinking on the plane of the absolute and planting a seed, which if left undisturbed will germinate into fruition. Why is it scientifically exact? Because it is natural law. What is faith? Faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things unseen. What is the law of attraction? The law by which faith is brought into manifestation. What importance do you attach to an understanding of this law? It has eliminated the elements of uncertainty and caprice from men's lives and substituted law, reason and certitude. Death is but the natural process whereby all material forms are thrown into the crucible for reproduction in fresh diversity. This part tells of numerous counterfeits and perversions by which many are led to think that something can be had for nothing. There is no royal road to success. We must give before we can get. If we cannot give money, we must give service, we must give time and thought. The law of compensation demands an eye for an eye. It tells how we may create the implements by which we may put into operation the laws by which we can gain access to the unlimited resources of nature. Introduction. In the fourth paragraph you will find the following statement. You must first have the knowledge of your power, second, the courage to dare, third, the faith to do. If you concentrate upon the thoughts given, if you give them your entire attention, you will find a world of meaning in each sentence, and will attract to yourself other thoughts in harmony with them, and you will soon grasp the full significance of the vital knowledge upon which you are concentrating. Knowledge does not apply itself, we as individuals must make the application, and the application consists in fertilizing the thought with a living purpose. The time and thought which most persons waste in aimless effort would accomplish wonders if properly directed with some special object in view. In order to do this, it is necessary to center your mental force upon a specific thought and hold it there, to the exclusion of all other thoughts. If you have ever looked through the focusing screen of a camera, you found that when the object was not in focus, the impression was indistinct and possibly blurred, but when the proper focus was obtained the picture was clear and distinct. This illustrates the power of concentration. Unless you can concentrate upon the object which you have in view, you will have but a hazy, indifferent, vague, indistinct and blurred outline of your ideal, and the results will be in accordance with your mental picture. Part 12. There is no purpose in life that cannot be best accomplished through a scientific understanding of the creative power of thought. The power to think is common to all. Man is, because he thinks. Man's power to think is infinite, consequently his creative power is unlimited. We know that thought is building for us the thing we think of and actually bringing it nearer, yet we find it difficult to banish fear, anxiety or discouragement, all of which are powerful thought forces, and which continually send the things we desire further away, so that it is often one step forward and two steps backward. The only way to keep from going backward is to keep going forward. Eternal vigilance is the price of success. There are 3 steps, and each one is absolutely essential. You must first have the knowledge of your power, second, the courage to dare, third, the faith to do. With this as a basis you can construct an ideal business, an ideal home, ideal friends, ideal environment. You are not restricted as to material or cost. Thought is omnipotent and has the power to draw on the infinite bank of primary substance for all that it requires. Infinite resources are therefore at your command. But your ideal must be sharp, clear-cut, definite. To have one ideal today, another tomorrow, and a third next week, means to scatter your forces and accomplish nothing. Your result will be a meaningless and chaotic combination of wasted material. Unfortunately, this is the result which many are securing, and the cause is self-evident. If a sculptor started out with a piece of marble and a chisel and changed his ideal every 15 minutes, what result could he expect? And why should you expect any different result in molding the greatest and most plastic of all substances, the only real substance? The result of this indecision and negative thought is often found in the loss of material wealth. Supposed independence, which required many years of toil and effort, suddenly disappears. It is often found then that money and property are not independence at all. On the contrary, the only independence is found to be a practical working knowledge of the creative power of thought. This practical working method cannot come to you until you learn that the only real power which you can have is the power to adjust yourself to divine and unchangeable principles. You cannot change the infinite, but you can come into an understanding of natural laws. The reward of this understanding is a conscious realization of your ability to adjust your thought faculties to the universal thought which is omnipresent. Your ability to cooperate with this omnipotence will indicate the degree of success with which you meet. The power of thought has many counterfeits which are more or less fascinating, but the results are harmful instead of helpful. Of course, worry, fear and all negative thoughts produce a crop after their kind. Those who harbor thoughts of this kind must inevitably reap exactly what they have sown. Again, there are the phenomena seekers who gormandize on the so-called proofs and demonstrations obtained at materializing seances. They throw open their mental doors and soak themselves in the most poisonous currents which can be found in the psychic world. They do not seem to understand that it is the ability to become negative, receptive and passive, and thus drain themselves of all their vital force, which enables them to bring about these vibratory thought forms. There are also the Hindu worshippers, who see in the materializing phenomena which are performed by the so-called adepts, a source of power, forgetting, or never seeming to realize that as soon as the will is withdrawn the forms wither, and the vibratory forces of which they are composed vanish. Telepathy, or thought transference, has received considerable attention, but as it requires a negative mental state on the part of the receiver, the practice is harmful. A thought may be sent with the intention of hearing or seeing, but it will bring the penalty attached to the inversion of the principle involved. Hypnotism is positively dangerous to the subject as well as the operator. No one familiar with the laws governing in the mental world would think of attempting to dominate the will of another, for by so doing he will gradually but surely divest himself of his own power. All of these perversions have their temporary satisfaction and for some a keen fascination, but there is an infinitely greater fascination in a true understanding of the world of power within, a power which increases with use, is permanent instead of fleeting, which not only is potent as a remedial agency to bring about the remedy for past error or results of wrong thinking, but as a prophylactic agency protecting us from all manner and form of danger, and finally as an actual creative force with which we can build new conditions and new environment. The law is, that thought will correlate with its object and bring forth in the material world the correspondence of the thing thought or produced in the mental world. We then discern the absolute necessity of seeing that every thought has the inherent germ of truth in order that the law of growth will bring into manifestation good, for good alone can confer any permanent power. The principle which gives the thought the dynamic power to correlate with its object, and therefore to master every adverse human experience, is the law of attraction, which is another name for love. This is an eternal and fundamental principle, inherent in all things, in every system of philosophy, in every religion and in every science. There is no getting away from the law of love. It is feeling that imparts vitality to thought. Feeling is desire, and desire is love. Thought impregnated with love becomes invincible. We find this truth emphasized wherever the power of thought is understood. The universal mind is not only intelligence, but it is substance, and this substance is the attractive force which brings electrons together by the law of attraction so that they form atoms. The atoms in turn are brought together by the same law and form molecules. Molecules take objective forms, and so we find that the law of love is the creative force behind every manifestation, not only of atoms, but of worlds, of the universe, of everything of which the imagination can form any conception. It is the operation of this marvelous law of attraction which has caused men in all ages and all times to believe that there must be some personal being who responded to their petitions and desires, and manipulated events in order to comply with their requirements. It is the combination of thought and love which forms the irresistible force, called the law of attraction. All natural laws are irresistible. The law of gravitation, or electricity, or any other law operates with mathematical exactitude. There is no variation, it is only the channel of distribution which may be imperfect. If a bridge falls, we do not attribute the collapse to any variation of the law of gravitation. If a light fails us, we do not conclude that the laws governing electricity cannot be depended upon, and if the law of attraction seems to be imperfectly demonstrated by an inexperienced or uninformed person, we are not to conclude that the greatest and most infallible law upon which the entire system of creation depends has been suspended. We should rather conclude that a little more understanding of the law is required, for the same reason that a correct solution of a difficult problem in mathematics is not always readily and easily obtained. Things are created in the mental or spiritual world before they appear in the outward act or event. By the simple process of governing our thought forces today, we help create the events which will come into our lives in the future, perhaps even tomorrow. Educated desire is the most potent means of bringing into action the law of attraction. Man is so constituted that he must first create the tools, or implements by which he gains the power to think. The mind cannot comprehend an entirely new idea until a corresponding vibratory brain cell has been prepared to receive it. This explains why it is so difficult for us to receive or appreciate an entirely new idea. We have no brain cell capable of receiving it. We are therefore incredulous, we do not believe it. If, therefore, you have not been familiar with the omnipotence of the law of attraction, and the scientific method by which it can be put into operation, or if you have not been familiar with the unlimited possibilities which it opens to those who are enabled to take advantage of the resources it offers, begin now and create the necessary brain cells which will enable you to comprehend the unlimited powers which may be yours by cooperating with natural law. This is done by concentration or attention. The intention governs the attention. Power comes through repose. It is by concentration that deep thoughts, wise speech and all forces of high potentiality are accomplished. It is in the silence that you get into touch with the omnipotent power of the subconscious mind from which all power is evolved. He who desires wisdom, power or permanent success of any kind will find it only within. It is an unfoldment. The unthinking may conclude that the silence is very simple and easily attained, but it should be remembered that only in absolute silence may one come into contact with divinity itself, may learn of the unchangeable law and open for himself the channels by which persistent practice and concentration lead to perfection. Now go to the same room, take the same chair, the same position as heretofore, be sure to relax, let go, both mentally and physically, always do this, never try to do any mental work under pressure, see that there are no tense muscles or nerves, that you are entirely comfortable. Now realize your unity with omnipotence, get into touch with this power, come into a deep and vital understanding, appreciation and realization of the fact that your ability to think is your ability to act upon the universal mind, and bring it into manifestation. Realize that it will meet any and every requirement, that you have exactly the same potential ability which any individual ever did have or ever will have, because each is but an expression or manifestation of the one, all are parts of the whole, there is no difference in kind or quality, the only difference being one of degree. Part 12 Questions. How may any purpose in life be best accomplished? Through a scientific understanding of the spiritual nature of thought. What 3 steps are absolutely essential? The knowledge of our power, the courage to dare, the faith to do. How is the practical working knowledge secured? By an understanding of natural laws. What is the reward of an understanding of these laws? A conscious realization of our ability to adjust ourselves to divine and unchanging principle. What will indicate the degree of success with which we meet? The degree in which we realize that we cannot change the infinite but must cooperate with it. What is the principle which gives thought its dynamic power? The law of attraction which rests on vibration, which in turn rests upon the law of love. Thought impregnated with love becomes invincible. Why is this law irresistible? Because it is a natural law. All natural laws are irresistible and unchangeable and act with mathematical exactitude. There is no deviation or variation. Why then does it sometimes seem to be difficult to find the solution to our problems in life? For the same reason that it is sometimes difficult to find the correct solution to a difficult mathematical problem. The operator is uninformed or inexperienced. Why is it impossible for the mind to grasp an entirely new idea? We have no corresponding vibratory brain cell capable of receiving the idea. How is wisdom secured? By concentration. It is unfoldment. It comes from within. Thought cannot conceive of anything that may not be brought to expression. He who first uttered it may be only the suggester, but the doer will appear. Wilson. Advice. Remember, fully to understand grand and beautiful thought requires, perhaps, as much time as to conceive it. Joubert. If you wish to enjoy the utmost practical benefit from the master key, go slowly. Transfuse into your mind the contents of one part only, each week for 24 weeks. Realize the meaning of every phrase. Consult the master key constantly, as your perpetual help and stimulus. Each time you read the work, you will get a better understanding of the eternal cosmic principles. Tell others of the master key so that more and more people may reciprocate with you, as conscious adepts in harmony. The publishers.